So I started playing football at 4 years old, and I stayed with my first team all the way up until I was 11 years old. And I did learn a lot from, staying with my first team. That's where sort of your foundations as a footballer gets built upon. You know what I'm saying? Your passing, your first touch, just your reading of the game. That's where your mind sort of develops when you first start playing football at 4 years old all the way up until I was 11 years old. However, I do regret not moving teams a couple of times during that period, simply because I feel like I got too comfortable. I got too comfortable with the surroundings. I played under the same coach for those 7-8 years, played with pretty much the same teammates for those 7-8 years, the same parents, the same style of play as well. Whereas I feel like if I had moved teams a couple of times and experienced a different style of playing, different managers, different teammates with their different personalities, I feel like that would have been, optimal for my growth as a young player. So when I finally moved teams at 11 years old, I had to go through different challenges, different trials and tribulations. So first of all, you have to actually go through the trials. You're competing for a place in the team. Then you're competing for, places in the starting 11. And then there was even a period where I got benched for like the first time. That was the first time in my sort of football career where I'd got benched for, a run of games. I think I was benched for like 4 or 5 games simply because I wasn't performing well. And then obviously I had to learn, resilience. I had to overcome that, fight my way back into the starting 11, and just basically at the end of the season, pretty much for like the last 10 games, I was starting every single game. So obviously things like that, challenges like that, they teach you a lot as a footballer. And this video is all about getting out of your comfort zone as a footballer. You have to get out of your comfort zone because it's the only way to grow, you understand? When you avoid discomfort, you're only avoiding growth, you know what I'm saying? You have to be put in certain situations that will make or break you as a player. If you want to improve, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. So today I'm going to be teaching you the importance of getting out of your comfort zone as a footballer. So my first point in being uncomfortable in, not allowing comfort to rule you as a footballer is when you're joining teams, in my opinion, just make sure you don't join a team where too many of your friends are also on that team, you understand? From my experience, it just never goes well when you have too many friends on one team, because I've done it myself and it just didn't work out. I feel like you're not locked in as much, you understand? You're not locked in as much in training, maybe the coach is talking and you're making jokes with your friends, you're not really that locked in. Maybe when you're in training, you're not competing, you're not going as hard because there are so many of your friends, you're sort of just, just being casual, just taking it chill. Whereas I feel like when you're not really friends with people, in training, in my first few training sessions with a new team, I'll be flying into challenges, I'll be, trying to make my point, trying to stamp my authority and be like, yo, I need to get into this starting 11, you understand? I'm trying to play. I'm not trying to turn up on a Saturday or turn up on a Sunday and just sit on the bench, you understand? Like, if I see the ball, I'm going through you, even if you're my teammate, or just little things like that, I feel like the intensity is always better when you have a team where people are not necessarily friends, you understand? Because I feel like that breeds healthy competition, and that ultimately will make you a better player. The better quality the training sessions are, the better you're going to be as a player, you understand? I feel like when you're with a lot of your friends, it's sort of like, it's very jokey, it's very relaxed, you understand? Whereas when you don't know people, that's where your pride sort of comes into play, you understand? Like, think about it. If you've ever been to like a 5-a-side tournament or a 7-a-side tournament, obviously when you're with your teammates, but you're playing against guys you don't know, obviously you're going to be going 10 times as hard, 10 times as hard against, people that you don't know in like a 5-a-side tournament than if you were to get 10 of your friends to play a 5-a-side match on like an AstroTurf just between you and your friends. Obviously you're going to go way harder in the tournament because there's something to play for, but more importantly, in my opinion, you don't really know these guys, you know what I'm saying? You don't really know these guys, you don't really care about them. So you're going to be, flying into challenges, you're going to be trying to just prove to them that, yo, I'm better than you as a player, full stop, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like in terms of, joining teams, with your friends, I feel like it just never really works out, you know what I'm saying? It never really works out. I don't think it's that optimal for your growth. I feel like you have to go through those sort of experiences where I think it's a good thing where you have to sort of deal with a teammate that you don't particularly like, you understand? Like, there's been multiple teammates in my life where I just didn't like them, but I just sort of had to just sort of deal with them and just sort of be like, yo, I don't like this guy, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to go out onto the pitch and we're going to have to be teammates. We're just going to have to work this out all for the benefit of the team, you understand? I feel like those kind of experiences are good for you, understand? Because once you get to the pro level, you're not going to be able to choose who you play with, you understand? It's not going to be a case of, oh, I like this guy, so let me so I wanna play here. Or you can't just go up to, you can't just go up to, the owner of the club and be like, yo, I like this guy, we're good friends, I think you should sign him. It's like, no, the owner's gonna look at you and be like, yo, no, we're gonna get people based off their footballing ability. If you don't like them, then yo, you're gonna have to get to like them, you understand? So it's just good, it's just a good way to prepare you for, playing football at the top level, where you're not gonna like everyone, you're not gonna get along with anyone, you're not gonna be best friends with everyone. Some people are gonna like certain things, some people are gonna like certain things, some people are just gonna get on your nerves, you understand? And it's just all about, getting that experience of, working with people that you don't particularly like or you don't particularly get along with, and just, working with them for a common goal, you understand? Working for them for the benefit of the team, to win games, to win trophies, you understand? So I feel like that's a good learning experience, especially if you're young and you've played for multiple different teams. I feel like getting out of your comfort zone, just dealing with multiple different teammates, I feel like that's a good thing. Multiple different coaches as well. So, there's going to be coaches who are strict on you. There's going to be coaches who are very, very lenient. But just getting those different sort of experiences, I feel like it's good for a young player, because you know how to maneuver, you understand? Imagine if you've just been playing for a lenient coach your whole career. A coach who doesn't really mind you being late to training. A coach who doesn't really do anything if you're not putting in the work, if you're not running hard enough in training, or you're not running hard in the game. Trust me, when you get to, let's say you've been playing with that lenient manager from the ages of like 5 all the way to like 16. Once you move clubs at 16 and you get to that higher level where you've got, a strict coach, he doesn't take any bullshit, you're gonna be hit with a reality check, a serious reality check. Whereas if you're a guy who's you've already seen this strict coach, you know what he's about, you know what he likes. If you've seen it all before, then it's just going to be a much smoother transition, you understand? You're just going to be like, alright, cool, I know what this coach is like, I've seen this type of coach before, I know how to move, I know what I can get away with and what I can't get away with. And yeah, it's just going to be a smooth transition. Same with your teammates, you understand? If you've played for a lot of teams, you know, okay, cool, this teammate, he's a calm guy, this teammate, he's a dickhead. And you just move accordingly, you understand? So it's, in my opinion, it's good to, get uncomfortable. It's good to get that experience when you're a young player as soon as possible. One weakness that many footballers have is improving their weak foot. For some reason, a lot of players I've spoken to just can't seem to figure out how to improve their weak foot, whether they're right-footed or left-footed. But luckily for you, I've made a course on how to improve your weak foot. This course is currently in the works. In this course, I'm going to be showing you drills. I'm going to be teaching you how to get better at, different aspects of the game in terms of your weak foot. So passing, your shooting, your dribbling. And I'll be teaching you stuff outside of the pitch that can actually help your weak foot as well, things that no other football YouTuber is talking about. So if you're interested, if you want to improve your weak foot, click the first link in the description, get the course, and trust me, you won't regret. Your weak foot will 100% improve. When I was around like the age of 10, I always used to see these guys who would move clubs every single year. 1 year in my league, they'll be playing for this team. The next year, they'll be playing for this team. The next year, they'll be playing for this team. And I'd always sort of look down upon these guys and sort of make fun of them. I'll be like, yo, why is this guy always moving teams? You understand? Why does he keep jumping from team to team to team? But in my opinion, that player has so much more experience than me at that time, you understand? That 10-year-old had way more experiences than me at that time, simply because he had played under different coaches, different systems. He probably played different positions as well. So as a young player, if you play different positions, your football intelligence is probably gonna be a lot higher. You probably know, certain situations on the pitch. You know how to deal with certain situations. Okay, cool, in this situation, I need to play in one touch. I need to play in 2 touches. Maybe they've been a defender before and they know, okay, cool, in this situation, I'm going to play out from the back. But in this situation, I just need to clear my lines. I can't mess about, you understand? It's just the little things where he's played for different teams, different styles of play. Maybe one team, he played a possession style of football. Next team, a counter-attacking style of football. Like I said, he's just had those experiences, so he knows. And these are the guys who, when they get to like 13, 14, they just sort of have this unwavering confidence because they've seen everything before. Maybe they've played for an academy and they've got dropped. You know what I'm saying? They've got released by an academy, but they've played there before. So they just know how certain things move. And at like 12, 13, 14, I didn't have that sort of, unwavering confidence because I hadn't had that experience yet. You know what I'm saying? I'd only played for 2 teams at a similar level, so I didn't really have that experience. I didn't really have the know-how on how to move. But certain guys, when they get to like 13, 14, 15, they've seen everything before. They've played with a variety of different players with different personalities. They know how to deal with certain players. They've played with a variety of players in terms of their abilities. They've played with bad players, average players, they play with the best players as well, you know what I'm saying? So this is why you see them guys, like I said, 14, 15, 16, they just sort of have that confidence. They've seen it all, but they've seen it all before. They've dealt with different coaches, different formations and play style, and yeah, it just builds that experience, and it ultimately just builds that confidence. You understand? They've gained certain skills, certain traits from this team, from that coach, and in my opinion, they couldn't learn all of that because they couldn't learn all of that without getting out of their comfort zone, you understand? Without getting uncomfortable. Maybe it was changing position, you know. Maybe they were a striker and they had to start playing in centre mid. At first it was a bit uncomfortable, you understand? But over time they got used to that position, and now they can sort of add certain weapons to their arsenal, you understand? Maybe it's a different style of play. Maybe they like, you know, a more counter-attacking style of play where they just get the ball head down, and they constantly, you know, they just want to take on their man every single time. But they move to like a possession style of play with a different coach, and the coach just teaches them about, okay, cool, I know you love to dribble, I know you love to, you know, always guard your man, but you have to time it, you understand? You have to keep the ball, and then when the moment's right, then you can attack, then you can isolate your defender. It's going to be uncomfortable for that player at that moment, but once he understands, you know, timing, once he understands, okay, cool, in this situation, let me just pass it, bang, and then he sees the opportunity, and then he goes, you know what I'm saying? So he's learning different skills. He's learning, okay, the timing, when to take on my man, when not to take on my man. Do I need to go on the outside? Do I need to go on the inside? Do I need to play a 1-2 with my teammate? You know what I'm saying? Just little things where, you know, it was uncomfortable at the time, but like I said before, discomfort, it ultimately leads to you growing as a player. So like I said, don't avoid discomfort. Always seek discomfort, because if you avoid discomfort, you're avoiding growth as a player, and obviously you don't want to do that. For example, when I was 11 years old and I was at my last season with my first ever club, I realized in that last season, you know, I just lacked the motivation. You know, I was turning up late to training. I wasn't really training as hard. Even in the matches, I was sort of, you know, lackluster. I was playing well, but I was sort of, you know, lackluster. It wasn't the same as previous years, and that was simply because I had got comfortable. You know, I was turning up late to training with the mindset, even though it wasn't a conscious thought in my mind, it was more subconscious at the back of my mind. I was thinking, oh, you know, I'm late to training, it's a bad thing. However, even if I am late to training, I'm still going to start the game on Sunday, you understand? I'm still going to start. There really is no one else who really plays my position. My place in the team isn't really under any threat. So, you know, it's okay if I turn up 5 minutes late to training, 10 minutes late to training. It's okay if I don't put in the effort in the fitness work. It's okay if, you know, I pull out of a 50-50 in training, you understand? Because there were no consequences, you understand? And this is what happens when you get too comfortable. However, after that season was done and I joined my new team, all of a sudden my fire was back, you understand? My fire was back, you know. I was going hard in the trials, and then even when I got onto the team, going hard in training also, you know, just trying to stamp my authority and be like, yo, I need to play. I'm not trying to turn up to the game and just stay on the bench, you understand? I was striving to, you know, prove that I was one of the best players on the team. I was one of them guys who were undroppable, you understand? So yeah, I really felt it when I joined the new team. It was an uncomfortable situation. It was a new environment where I actually had to compete for my place in the team. It was probably the first time at 11 years old where I felt like, okay, cool, my place is under threat. And obviously that just took me to a new level, you understand? That made me work harder. That made me just focus and just sort of lock in even more, you understand? And yeah, ultimately it just improved me as a player. Like I said before, on that team, I eventually got benched because I wasn't really playing well. On my old team, even if I didn't really play well for, you know, 3-4 games, I would still be in the starting 11, you understand? However, this team was the first ever time where, you know, I had a bad 3 games and then I got benched. I was benched for like 4 games, but then after those 4 games, straight away, you know, when I was coming off the bench, I was having good performances. And then bang, got back into the starting 11, you understand? So it's just certain situations where you're just uncomfortable, you know, sitting on the bench, not starting games. That was not familiar for me, you understand? Every single time the lineup got called out, I was always there on the lineup. But to see myself on the bench, I was like, damn, like my ego was hurt. I was like, damn, like I do not know this feeling, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? I did know the feeling of, you know, your coach telling you, you know, get up, warm up, you're coming on in 5 minutes. Like that was never me, you understand? I was always on the pitch just playing, but yo, I was uncomfortable in that situation, but ultimately it led to me growing as a player, you understand? It led to me realizing that, yo, you actually have to work, you know what I'm saying? You have to work and you have to be consistent, you know, consistent in training, consistent in your performances. That it taught me that, yo, you're always in competition, you know, even if you're on a team, and you are supposed to be teammates, you're supposed to be one team, but just in the back of your mind, you always have to know that you're in competition, especially if you're a guy who you care about playing, which if you're watching this, I know you care about playing, you care about being the best player on your team. Some players don't really care, players don't mind coming off the bench, but me personally, I want to play, you understand? I want to feel like I'm a valuable part of the team. I don't want to just be a bench warmer. I don't want to just be a side man on the team who doesn't really have that impact, you understand? I want to be, one of the main reasons my team wins games and wins leagues, wins trophies, you understand? So literally, you always just have to realize that you're in competition. So yeah, literally me moving teams, it got me out of my comfort zone and ultimately made me a better player. So in my opinion, embrace discomfort, embrace playing for new teams, embrace new systems, new positions even. It's not gonna be nice at first, you know what I'm saying? It's not gonna be nice at first, but eventually, trust me, eventually you're gonna get better and better at it, and then you're gonna look back in like a year's time and you're gonna be like, damn, like I'm actually grateful for that time. Like I'm actually grateful for that time where I moved positions, or I had to change my style of play to fit the team, you understand? Because it taught me this skill, it taught me this. Improved this technical ability in my game, improved this physical ability in my game, improved my match intelligence, you understand? There's always growth that comes from discomfort, so it might not feel nice at the time, but literally it's going to be worth it in the long run. So my advice in terms of getting out of your comfort zone would literally be, move teams if you have a chance to play at a higher level. Even though you might have to spend a few games on the bench and you might not start as many games as you are on your old team, in my opinion, if you can play at a higher level, train with better players, like I said, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. You might feel that, oh damn, am I really good enough? You might have self-doubts about yourself. You might think, oh, the speed of play is too quick for me. But however, you're going to get used to it, and eventually, if you work hard, you're performing on the pitch, you're eventually going to start games, and now all of a sudden you're starting games at an even higher level than you were before, you understand? Or I'd say move teams if you find yourself getting lazy, you find things getting a bit stale. Every single time I move teams, I always had that feeling. You have that feeling where you think, things are getting a bit stale. Suddenly your motivation isn't there anymore. Suddenly you're at training and you're like, oh, why am I even here at training? You understand? In my opinion, there's always a cycle where things get stale. So once you feel, things getting stale, or you feel like you don't have that same enthusiasm to play with your teammates, all of a sudden, for some reason, your teammates are just starting to piss you off, they're just starting to annoy you, that's the time, in my opinion, to move teams. And then also, in terms of working on your game and getting uncomfortable, work on those weaknesses, you understand? Work on those weaknesses and, work on them to the point where you have the confidence to try it in a game. This might be your dribbling, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you're not a dribbler, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't a dribbler, me personally, but, through, working on my dribbling, working on my close control, working on carrying the ball at long distances, I started doing it more in the game, you understand? I started being comfortable with, receiving the ball and then driving 10, 15, 20 yards and then playing a pass, you understand? Before I just take a touch, I'll just take a first touch, maybe take one more and then pass the ball, even though I had space to, drive. But it's all about, working on your flaws. It's going to be uncomfortable, like I said, but it's going to make you a better player in the long run. Same as your weak foot, bro. Your weak foot is very hard to train, because with your weak foot, especially if you're not used to training your weak foot, or you just don't have a good weak foot in general, it's very hard to get good reps while you're training. So it's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna feel like, what's the point in even training my weak foot when I'm not getting good reps in? Maybe you're trying to work on your dribbling with your weak foot and you keep hitting the cones, you know what I'm saying? It's uncomfortable. You keep hitting the cones and you're like, what's the point in even doing this? Am I even actually doing anything? Am I actually getting better as a player? But you just have to keep going. Just fight through that discomfort, and then eventually you're going to eventually you're going to be able to dribble with both feet. Even with your shooting on your weak foot, there's gonna be a starting point where it's like you're not even hitting the target. Let's say you're shooting at an 11-a-side goal. You shape the shoot on your weak foot, and then the ball's just P-rolling into the goal, you know what I'm saying? It's just P-roller after P-roller, you're just sort of scuffing it. But then eventually, once you sort of get a hold of the mechanics of, shooting on your weak foot, once you actually realize that, you just sort of have to replicate what you do on your strong foot, you just sort of replicate with your weak foot in terms of the balance, in terms of your approach to the ball, you understand? And then eventually, you're going to be shooting, and then you're going to get more power. All of a sudden, you're going to get the power, the accuracy, and the ball's going to be flying into the corners, you understand? But it's all about that initial discomfort of, getting those reps in, even though they're not good reps, even though they're not good reps, you don't feel like you're really getting anything done in your training sessions. But trust me, once you actually fight through that discomfort, you fight through that period, and you start getting good reps in, you're gonna thank yourself that you worked on your weak foot, because it's gonna open up your game so much. You're gonna be able to pass, play pings with your weak foot. Let's say you're a winger, you can go both ways with your weak foot. If you're a fullback, if you've got a 5-star weak foot as a fullback, it's sort of a thing where it's like, yo, you can play right back and left back. If you're a winger, you can play right wing and left wing. If you're a number 8, doesn't matter. You can play the left 8, you can play the right 8. Doesn't really matter. You can receive the ball with your back foot on both feet. Doesn't really matter. You can dribble with both feet. You know what I'm saying? So all in all, it's just gonna make you a better player. So yeah, that's the video on discomfort. Getting out of your comfort zone. You have to get a little bit uncomfortable. Being comfortable is nice, but you're not going to improve as a player. You're ultimately going to plateau as a player. So put yourself in situations, no matter what it is, where you're a little bit uncomfortable. You understand? You're uncomfortable, but just know there's always growth that's going to come from it. You're always going to get better at something when you get uncomfortable, when you're put in those uncomfortable situations. But that's the vid for today. I hope you enjoyed. I've been JT, and I'm out.